What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. I'm Isaiah, and today I invite you to sit back, relax, grab a tasty beverage, and let me talk at you for a second. And what I'd like to talk at you for a second about is this game, Relicblade, by Sean Sutter from over at Metal King Studio. Now, off gate, when I open this is an absolutely gorgeous rule book. Now, I've tabbed and highlighted and underlined all through this thing because that's just how I treat my rule books. But this is an absolutely beautiful book. Like, I have been on record numerous times as saying that the Silver Bayonet rule book is my favorite rule book. But I don't know, this one gives it, like, these beautiful models. You get, kind of thematic shots like this kind of spaced throughout. And then the art is just, like, look at this guy. I want this model. I'm not sure which team he's a part of yet, but I want this model. This gnarly looking dwarf wizard dude. I want him. It's well laid out. It's well written. And it's the right size. Like, I'm a big fan of this. I don't know if it's called like A4 or something like that, I think maybe. But this smaller format rulebook size, I'm a big fan of. I hate, because if I'm going to go play somewhere that's not the house, not in the studio, then that means I got to haul the rulebook with me. And this is way easier to put in my book bag than some big, giant, honking thing, you know. A little bit about the game. So this is the second printing of the rules, or second edition of the rules. It's the most up to date. Mr. Sutter over there at Metal King does all this stuff pretty much by himself. Like, he does the art, the layout, sculpts the masters. He has a team for playtesting and all that stuff, I'm sure, but he does the bulk of it on his own, which is incredibly impressive. Let me see, created by Mr. Sutter, designed by Mr. Sutter, additional help with some additional development and editing. The illustrations by Sean Sutter, you can check out his Instagram at Sean_Sutter_art. Sculpture by Sean Sutter. Malev Minis did the painting. Photography by Matt Sutter, Malev, and Sean Sutter. And then the book designed by Eben Burgoon and Sean Sutter. So he's got his hands in every part of this thing, and I think that's awesome. As someone who plays a lot of games and reads a lot of rule books and has I guess a bit of an understanding of what goes into making a game, and I mean it's a lot, and it's awesome because it shows that it's really a passion project, and that shows through in the game. Like, it feels good to play it. Another cool thing, and apparently this is pretty much everybody, but when you order, you get like a little individual sketch. Mine was on the inside cover of the book, and that's a really cool. Again, you can tell that this is a passion project. This is something that he loves, and it comes through. And as an artist, that's the goal, man. You want a reaction. Any reaction is a good reaction. So first up in the book, core rules. Again, a beautiful panoramic spread of just fantastic illustration. Like, it's so pretty. So to play the game, you need your models, which he makes and sells. They're beautiful sculpts, and it's very small teams. Most teams are 4-on-4, so it's kind of into that micro skirmish terrain territory, where you don't. Even as skirmish games go, you don't need that many models. Your dice, which it uses D6. The character cards, which are cool because it's just a card with the base stats for whatever kind of model you have on the table. And quality of life things like that are very important to me as a gamer. Not to mention that the cards that come with the starter also have more of Sean's beautiful illustrations on them. They're an absolute joy to look at. I'll grab them before the video's out so you can see them. Upgrade cards, same thing. Relic cards, most of the game centers around acquiring these relics from around the land, either to cause some type of disaster as the adversary, or to prevent some type of disaster as if you're playing as the advocate. You need markers and tokens, and it comes with all the tokens you need. Here's a picture of them. Again, with more of Sean's beautiful illustrations on them. The only bad thing that I have to say about the tokens is that I wish that it came with a few more of them. I think everything you need is here. It also comes with 2 rangefinders. It comes with everything you need. I just wish there were more of them because I like tokens. What can I say? Measurements are in inches, and it plays on a 2x2, so it plays on a very, very small board, which means that if you have a group of friends that are playing the game and y'all are getting together for game nights, you could run several games on one 6x4 table. On one regular size table, or it's very easy, to have a game in the kitchen, or in a game on the counter, and a game, on the coffee table. It's a very small game. It does, in my opinion, but again, this is my opinion for pretty much all war games, is that having more terrain on the board enhances the gameplay, but I feel that way about everything. I love densely terrained boards, because that's where I get my real immersion jollies, and I want my immersion jollies. But you can play it with very little terrain. You want at least, I would say, at least one house, and then maybe some hedges or something like that, or a hill or two, some couple of rock clusters, depending on what kind of surface you had. I mean, obviously you can play with, paper towel rolls and books and the can of Comet from under the sink, but minimum, I would say, one big piece of terrain and then 3 or 4 small pieces of terrain will get the job done, as far as just giving you some line of sight blocking and some things that you have to maneuver around and work with. If you are just playing pickup games with your friends, or I'm pretty sure when you start the campaign too, which we'll take a look at the campaign section when we get there, 100 points is the standard. Now, obviously, you can play more or less than that, depending on what you and your opponent agree to, because as with all things in wargaming, as long as you and the person across the table from you agree to it, everything's fair game. So once you've got all those things gathered together, the game plays in rounds, and each round is comprised of 3 phases: the initiative phase, the activation phase, and the recovery phase. When you roll off, which is just everybody rolls a d6, winner wins the initiative. If you win the initiative, and this is something that at this point I've played through the Storms of Corral campaign, the one that comes through the starter. My buddy Josh came up and we played through the whole campaign, and I missed this rule every single time. And I looked at this turn order thing, but that happens sometimes. But respite. If you win the initiative, you can choose to pass the initiative in exchange for an extra recovery roll. We'll talk about recovery rolls here in a minute or two. So once you determine who's going to activate first, it's back and forth. I do stuff with the model, you do stuff with the model. I do stuff with the model, you do stuff with the model, until everybody's done doing stuff with models. But when it's your turn to do something with a model, there are a few things to be aware of. So here we have 2 different character cards. We have the Destroyer Pig and the Dark Prophet. Now, the first number to be aware of is this number in the top corner. 6 for the Prophet and a 3 for the Pig. That is your action dice total. Everything you do, just about, there are some free things and some passive things, but pretty much any action you take costs 1 of those action dice. With some exceptions. Some things, such as Corrode on the Dark Prophet, require 2 of your action dice. The only things that you can do more than once, unless specifically noted, are move. Just move. Move and disengage. So movement, disengage, and actions with multipliers. So Onslaught, right here on the War Pig, has a multiplier. So that means that I can use that ability 2 times as opposed to the normal 1 time. It still costs an action dice both times, but you can do it more than once. In addition to that, there's a number on the die. So when you roll that action test, that's your difficulty number. That's what you're trying to meet or beat. If you roll exactly that dice face, it's a crit, which on 1 dice is +2, on 2 dice is a d6, and on 3 or more dice is a 2d6. Of the different actions that you can take, there are melee weapon actions, ranged or melee weapons, natural weapons, passive abilities, magic spells, and special abilities, which cover a wide range of Nick. It's kind of a catch-all for all the different kind of special abilities that people have. And then some things are free abilities, which are usually going to be some type of reactionary thing or a quick buff or something of that nature. Your move actions don't have a difficulty. You just go. Movement doesn't have to be in a straight line. You can climb up stuff at the cost of a roll. So if you're going to climb, it's +1 difficulty for every inch you're going to climb, starting from 1, I would assume. So to climb up 3 inches, you need a 3 up on that movement roll. Jumping is the same, except for it's +2 difficulty for every linear inch, and with jumping, you run the risk of falling, and falling damage is 2 damage per inch that you fell. There are 3 what are called basic actions, which are to focus, to give yourself an extra die to roll, dodge, and an improvised attack. So an improvised attack is a difficulty 4, no damage bonus attack that just gives you another like punch, kick, headbutt, however you want to imagine it in your brain. It gives you an extra little slap in the face to them to potentially get that last point or 2 damage in. If you charge somebody, so if you end your movement touching them, you get a bonus dice to do an attack with. Which brings us into talking about how the combat works in the game, which it is a very, very simple system. And for that reason, I think that Relicblade is a really good game to introduce maybe a new wargamer or someone who's coming over from a different system that's just isn't familiar with other systems. It's pretty straightforward. It uses just D6s, which most wargamers have laying around. Some of the games use more of the polyhedral dice, and not all wargamers are just going to have those sitting around, depending on what's in their gaming library. So I think that it is a good game to introduce. Like Josh, my buddy who plays the campaign that you're going to see over the next few weeks, he's brand new. He's played a few games of Rangers of Shadow Deep with me, and then we just kind of jumped in, and he picked it right up, and we were able to go. He has minimal wargaming experience, and we had a good time. Or I had a good time. He said he had a good time. I'm assuming he had a good time. I don't think he would lie to me. But we were able to do that with, him not having a whole lot of wargaming background. So the game is simple to understand, but with the way the action economy works, it can create some really interesting decision trees to think through as far as your strategy and your tactics go. So once you have the system, the fairly basic system down, there's lots of room there for planning out how to spend and use those actions to greater effect. And that is part of the fun of wargaming. I like wargames where I have to put the puzzle together, not wargames where I just have to have better rules at the moment, or some cheesy thing. I like it when it's fairly even footing and it's just put the pieces together to get where you need to be. And this game provides a lot of opportunity for that. So when you attack, if it's a melee attack, you have to be within a half inch. If it's a ranged attack, you have to be within whatever the range of your weapon is. But you roll to hit and you're looking for the difficulty on your weapon. Once that happens, I roll, as the attacker, I roll a dice and I add my damage mod. The defender rolls a dice and adds their defense or their armor mod. And then you subtract the defense mod, the defense roll from the attack roll, and anything that's left over is damage. Very straightforward. There are some ways to heal and other things of that nature can happen, but it's very straightforward. Now, one thing to be aware of is that the way the steps are written, you can't pre-measure, because it's very clearly stated in the steps that you declare your target, check your range, roll your dice. And that there could be there could be lots of things. I've just recently, within the past month, gotten the game and the models painted and the book read through and highlighted and tabbed and read through it a couple times and played the campaign. But there's always going to be things that I miss, just because I'm human and it happens. But we do our best. So in the course of waging this Mortal Kombat against each other, eventually you're going to take some damage. On the bottom of the cards, let's take a look at Dark Prophet here, are the health boxes. The models don't have a whole lot of health, and some of the it's not unheard of in our plane of the game anyways to get pretty succinctly one-shotted if the dice rolls go particularly poorly. But there is one that's a broken bone. When you get to that wound, you lose an action dice. When you get to the skull, you are disabled, but not necessarily removed. So what happens is when you hit that skull marker, you lay the model down on its side. It's disabled, but it's not yet removed from play. It needs to take one more point of damage to be completely removed. If you have an ally, one of your models that's standing adjacent to your wounded model, that model can't be targeted. They have to fight the living person so you can protect your friends. Now, there are some very specific circumstances where you can get around that, but it doesn't seem to me something that's likely to happen very, very often. It's possible, but I don't think it's going to happen extremely often. At the end of the round, once everybody's done their stuff, for every disabled model that you have, you can roll a d6. And on a 6, they will stand back up with 1 health. Which brings us back to the point we were talking about earlier with the initiative roll, is that if you're hurting, you can trade that initiative for the chance to have another roll or another go, another 1 in 6 shot of getting one of your models to stand back up. And in our playthrough of the Storms of Kharal campaign, some of those recovery rolls were really clutch at really, really clutch times, and they were game changers. They completely altered the course of the game, or of at least 1 or 2 moments within the game. I won't say the whole game, but it made for some really clutch moments, and it forced my opponent into some decisions that they didn't want to have to make. The cover system is very straightforward. If the model's within a ½ inch of something that obscures half or more of the model, you get +2 to your armor. Super straightforward, very, very, very basic. I like that. I don't like it when cover systems get overly convoluted. Like it's cover. It shouldn't be that hard to establish and figure out. You just, sometimes some of it's just ridiculous. And so all of that to sum up, between the move, the dodge, the improvised attack, your special abilities, your attacks, attacks both melee and ranged, you do stuff until you run out of those action dice. And then you pass play to your opponent, and they do so, and back and forth until you get to the recovery phase. Now, after that kind of the base core rules section of the game, these are the basic, this is how we do it, we come into the advanced rules. So there are some extra rules for cover if you want to play a slightly more complex cover rule system. That's the critical hits or the advanced rule, but any book that has any game rule set that offers the potential for crits, I'm playing those rules. That's just me. You might not want to do that, but if I have the opportunity to roll crits, buddy, I'm trying to roll crits. Also in the advanced rules, you get your pickup action, your drop action, your trade action, and some random things that your characters might be able to do that are sometimes out of activation actions. You can potentially play the grid if you want to, if you already have D&D grid maps and stuff like that. Maybe you've got a bunch of those and you've got a bunch of that top-down 2D terrain. That could work beautifully for this. It's just make sure you have, as long as you have an inch grid and you're playing on a 2x2, you're set. You're all good there. There are then about 3 pages of special rules, keywords, stuff like that. And they're all pretty straightforward. There's not that many of them, so it's not like you have to keep up with an enormous amount of stuff, which is awesome. Because keeping up with stuff is awful. And with the cards, you get cards for your items, your upgrades, your characters, all that bookkeeping is done for you, and I love it. Next, we come into some special character types, companion, group activation, and constructs. Constructs seem really, really cool. They're just big death machines that can get charged up, and then they break stuff until they run out of charge, and then they wait to get charged back up. There's apparently mounted models in the game, which I haven't seen yet, but I do love cavalry and things that are riding stuff, so maybe I'll hunt that out at some point. And then summon characters, neutral characters, just kind of random other things that you might encounter. And that brings us to the end of the kind of rules section, and then we come in to the campaign rules. So I have not yet played the core rulebook style of campaign. The Storms of Corral campaign, this one, which comes with the starter box, is completely card driven. So you just kind of are getting the cards as you go through the campaign. It's not, so it works, it does that instead of these rules. But these campaign rules look awesome to me, and I'm very excited to convince someone to come play them with me. First thing off, you get to pick whether you're going to have an arcane tower, a frontier outpost, or an ancient stronghold off gate. That sounds awesome. Each one gives you some different bonuses for starting off the campaign. You have 3 forms of resource, main resource. You have influence, gold, and valor, which you use to spend on different things. Over the course of it, you get to gather fighters and adventure followers. And the cool thing that I think is really, really cool are the specialists. So like a scribe, an armor smith, an artisan, a chemist, and then a master at arms. And they allow you to make like upgrades, and they themselves can be upgraded from novice to journeyman to master. And I think that's very, very cool. It's another layer of base building, another layer of immersion within the world. And I am here for that. You also get rules in this section for heroic traits, which are like special abilities. So for example, one of them under the ranged combat is powerful shot. The ranged weapon attacks made from less than half range gain +1 damage, and that costs 4 valor. So that's one of those 3 resources that you spend. And that's really, really cool because it's another layer of customization for your guys beyond just the basic stuff. And there's also arcane traits, so witchcraft and wizardry and such. And then there's fate weaving, fate weaving is in here, but it works a little bit differently in this campaign. It's just you get to do X fate weave X number of times during a game. In this campaign mode, every time you fate weave, it costs influence. It costs one of those other resources, ranging from 5 are the cheapest ones up to 15 is the most expensive one. And then you get into your different adventures and setting up your scenario. Because campaigns can get can potentially snowball, it does offer a little bit of a handicap buffer. So if one team has more points than the other, that team gets the point difference in fate points, which can be used for fate weaving actions. They do not translate into influence. You can't turn them into influence later, but they give you some extra special things that you can do to try to level the playing field a little bit, which I think is a good consideration because I have played in lots of campaigns in different games where one side just kind of starts to get way ahead and it's difficult to catch up sometimes. That even happened a little bit in the Storms of Corral campaign. Not terribly bad. It does a pretty good job of leveling everything out on its own, or keeping it mostly leveled out on its own, because everybody gets some items at the start of each of the campaign missions. So even if you had lost the mission before, you're still going to get some stuff when you start the next mission. That brings us into the scenarios, of which it gives you 6. It gives you ancient waystones, the dangerous goods and hazardous materials, a pack yak escort, temple defense, the chamber of the reliquary, and the crucible of fate. And each one, you got your map layout, where your stuff needs to go, where your deployments are, some awesome pieces of art. God, this book's so pretty. Look at that pack yak. I want that model. I think that model exists. I think I may have seen that on the website. If it doesn't exist, I want it to. If anybody knows where to find it, holla at your boy. And then to that one, reliquary, more cool art, more scenarios. And then we go into Uncharted. So with the Uncharted scenarios, and this is one of the parts that I think is cool because it involves randomization. It's totally randomized. So you would randomize for like what type of setup you have. And then there's another chart on the next page where you can randomize for your scenario and your treasures. And I think that's pretty freaking sweet. because it gives you some versatility beyond the basic 6 missions. It's a way of giving you way more missions to play without having to necessarily actually write out that many missions, which I think is brilliant and a beautiful way of expanding the game right from the get-go. Now, beyond the different scenarios and all that stuff, we have environments, which are settings. So we have things like the Cyclopean Ruins. Look at this cool piece of art. There's so much of it in the book. And that will have some things specifically for it, different things that can happen in there, different effects that can be dealt with, different kinds of treasures that you might find while you're in there. Then we come to the arid borderlands. I have terrain to do the arid borderlands. And it has, you know, Lamp of the Jinn. How awesome is that? I wish that it was an actual card that I could hold. And it might be, and I just don't have that card. We got Fey Forests. We've got Dark Dungeons. And this is the one that I'm probably the most curious about because it involves very, very tightly packed dungeon tile kind of boards. And I've got some things that I might can use for that. So I'm kind of curious about that. And the special rules for it look neat as well. We then come into wild monsters, as some missions will have a wild beast of some sort that everybody's fighting, and it gives you the monster phase, which comes after the hero activation but before the recovery phase, and then it gives you a quick little AI for what the monsters should do in order to keep everything's, you know, fair. And it gives you, they have different behavior. So under the monster behavior, we have hunter behavior, guard behavior, and then we have a bestiary. So it's either going to be a hunter or a guard. And then we come into the bestiary, and it gives you some cards, you know, Ancient Dead, Banshee, how many are there? Basilisk, Fey Knight, and Revenant. I'm not sure. I need to look and see if there's just a monster pack. I want to know what, if the sculpts look like these things, then I want those. Otherwise, that may be something that I fill in with a gap from my already existing collection. And then beyond that, we've got something very similar to what he did with the missions. We have what he calls the Monster Field Guide. And it's, you pick whether it's going to be a small, a medium, or a large. And then there's charts. And you get to roll, or just pick or roll to see what the monster can do. So you can have I mean, it might not be infinite, and I'm not a mathematician. I'm an artist. But that's 18 different things. That should make it an incredibly large and diverse and replayable bunch of monsters. And then for the monsters treasure, you get a flow chart for if it's a 1 or a 2 or a 3 on a D3. And if it's a 3, then you get, you know, one of these 3 things. And I love it. I think it's clever. Then we get to our post-game system, so checking for injuries or wounds, influence and valor rewards, treasure rewards, your relic rewards, keeping relics, consuming relics, which can be consumed to gain 20 influence and 2 gold. A consumed relic is removed from the campaign, and you may choose to consume a relic held in their vault at any time. So the vault's something I didn't mention earlier, I don't think. On the sheet where you fill stuff out for your Seeker's Handbook campaign, you get a vault. So items that you aren't carrying, because you can only carry 1 relic into combat at a time, and it costs 10 influence to bring it into combat, I believe. But they are very, very powerful things, and so it's fair that you should have to pay something to use them. But extra ones can be stored in your vault, along with extra items and upgrades and things of that nature. And then as far as winning your campaign goes, there are a few options. You can do a limited quest line, so like X number of games, and whoever's won the most or has the most relics or has a certain X number of influence or whatever. And then we'll call it, so 6 missions. Sorry, it says 6 missions. And the player who earned the most total influence is crowned the victor. It says gold earned is worth 5 influence each, and relics are worth 15 influence. So the other things that you collected will count towards that total. Then you have exploration and treasure hunting, and a map-based campaign, which I feel like map-based campaign is what I want to do when I get into one of the core book campaigns. I love map campaigns. I like having a thing, a visual, and you can see it and see where you're going. It's one of the things that draws me very strongly to the 5X games, clicks, leagues, kicks, whatever. The map-based I think it's cool. I think it's cool. After the end of the campaign section, we come to a quick overview of some of the different heroes of the Advocate, along with some of the bad guys of the Adversary. And each of these that represents, like, you can have a team of just pigs or just the dark people, or you can mix them together. It's just up as long as you stay within, you know, bad guys, good guys, what have you. Then we've got lists of different upgrades, treasures, things that you can acquire. Now, yes, you could Xerox this out of the book if you wanted to. The roster sheets are on the Metal King website, and they're free. You don't have to pay anything for them. You have to go through the checkout process, but they're free, and you can just print those out, and it's way easier. And then some more awesome photographs of games and tables and stuff, and then we come to a campaign setting, which there are several campaign settings that he has written in extra of materials. There's actually a lot of content for this game that's already out there, which is dope. I love it when I find a game or when I finally get to a game and there's already lots of extra stuff to do. So that brings us to the end of this book. That's front cover to back cover. My big takeaways here are: 1, it's beautiful, gorgeous book, gorgeous game. 2, I love the quality of life aspects of the character cards and the upgrade cards and the item cards, and being able to have all of that stuff laid out in front of me in a very quick and easy manner that doesn't involve me erasing a hole in a piece of paper to keep up with everything. That's a big deal for me. I love that it's a game with a simple system, or a relatively simple system to grasp. So it's very good to introduce somebody into the hobby with, or just into a new game with. But that same relatively simple system does offer a fairly substantial depth of strategy and potential for managing the action economy, which I thoroughly enjoy. I love being forced to make choices. If you're just steamrolling across a board and you're never having to consider the repercussions of your actions, I mean, it can be fun once in a while, but it's not overall, in my opinion, anyways, for my taste and my flavor, it doesn't appeal to me. It's not nearly as much fun to me. So I think this game is an absolute winner, and I know that I'm not the first person to have that opinion. I'm certain of it, as a matter of fact, but that is my standing opinion. Let's talk turkey. So I purchased the 2-player starter set, which was $99 with the rulebook. Now, if you don't already have the rulebook and you just want those models or tokens or whatever, you can purchase that separately. But for $99, I got this rulebook, a cool bookmark, the deck of cards, 8 models, which are all awesome, the tokens, which include 2 rangefinders, and then all the tokens that you'll need for the game, and a cool bookmark. And I'm perfectly happy with that. I feel like that's for being able to take it out of the box, and it really, really is an out of the box, you have everything you need experience. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that's a perfectly fair price. The models are metal. They come, all the ones that I had came as single piece casting models, so no gluing stuff together other than gluing a model to a base. Again, that's right up my alley because I do not enjoy building models. I will do it when I have to. That's part of the reason that I love 3D printing so much, is because I don't have to put it together. It just appears in my extra bedroom fully assembled. However, that is a digression and potential topic for another video at some point. Maybe, probably not, because it's a little off-brand for me, but maybe to bring us to a conclusion about our actual topic, which was Relicblade by Sean Sutter from Metal King Studios. I think this game is awesome. I have had a lot of fun with it so far. I look forward to having a lot more fun with it. If you're interested in seeing more, I'll have some bat reps from our campaign, our Storms of Kural campaign, coming out within the next week or so. Check those out. Check out any other of the awesome content creators on YouTube that are making content for this awesome game, because if they're playing Relicblade, it's going to be worth watching, in my opinion. Thanks so much for tuning in, hanging out, letting me talk at you for a little while today. I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day. And as always, I'd like to say a big, huge, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to our patrons who support us and pledge to us over on Patreon. You guys are the absolute best. If you enjoyed the content you saw here today and that's something that you would like to consider doing to help out the channel, go over there, check out the link in the description, check out the Patreon. There's a lot of cool stuff over there, including access to our Discord server. Talk to me, hang out with me, talk about our work, what we got going on in the hobby, some shout outs, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out if that's something that you think you would be into. And regardless of whether or not you do that, I want you to know that I am incredibly grateful that you decided to stop by and spend part of your day with me today, rolling dice and pushing toy soldiers around. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, may the dice be ever in